Tell me if this sounds familiar. Your neighbor's house sold in 2 weeks and you're still sitting on the market. And trust me, it's probably not for the reasons that you think. If you didn't notice, the market shifted in Houston last year, and if you're still pricing your home like it's 2022, you're gonna miss the mark. I've had the pleasure now of selling in Houston for nearly 12 years, which has given me time to see the booms and the busts, the ebbs and the flows, and today I'm covering which homes are selling, which homes are sitting, and the 2 fixes that you can use if you find yourself at a predicament. Hi, I'm Carolyn Bauerschlag, a local resident and realtor right here in West Houston, and I've helped hundreds of people relocate from all over the country right to our great city. And if you're considering a move to the West Houston area, I would love to add you to our client family. Make sure to check the links below where you can find my contact information. At the time of this video in April 2026, we have 55,000 homes listed on the market. Now, for perspective, in the heat of the pandemic, we had as little as 18 or 19,000 homes available for sale. So put differently, that's nearly 3 times the amount of inventory listed right now than what was most restricted in maybe the time of 2021 or 2022. Now, it's not always fair just to compare today's market to COVID because everyone's market was wild and crazy across the nation, right? So if we wind it all the way back to a beautiful time in our market called 2019, we had somewhere between 35, 36, 38,000 homes on the market at any given time. So if you compare the market that we're in now to something that was perhaps a little bit more reasonable, we still have somewhere in the neighborhood of 45 to 50% more homes listed. And it's not just the number of homes on the market. If you look at the days on market right now, we're averaging 69 days. Now, if you're a seller, imagine that. You put your home on the market and you hear crickets for over 2 months. Are you happy? That's a tough one to really kind of swallow. And if you compare it to 2022, if that's the market that you're hung up on, our average at the time was a simple 4 weeks. And that's a drastic difference for any person to really swallow. And further, our months of inventory, or what we call a supply measure, is at 5 months of inventory, which for us as realtors says that we are in a balanced market. Now in 2022, for comparison, we were looking at something more along the lines of 1 or 2 months of inventory, which is significantly in favor of the seller. And of course, back in the pandemic era, buyers were constantly paying somewhere between 10 to 12% above list. And maybe our sellers today, maybe you are in an experience where you want to be able to sell in a market that you were forced to buy in. But unfortunately, that's just not where we are any longer. That's a lot of numbers to digest, but all of it to say that buyers simply have more choice. Buyers today are pickier and they're more discerning, and they can be because they have the time to be able to do it. Now, what is all of this driven by? Our sellers today are having a very hard time reconciling that the cost of borrowing is more than double what it was just a few years ago. And so much of the friction that we're experiencing in this market is that the sellers of 2026 are often the buyers of 2021. And so many of the struggles that we're having in today's market are really symptomatic of the fact that the sellers of 2026 are very frequently the buyers of 2021 and 22. And the dissonance between what was and what is what's causing so many issues in getting people across the finish line. Sellers today remember what they had to give as a buyer just 5 short years ago, and it's natural to want to have the same experience that you didn't get to have on the buy side. It's tough to have to compete with so many people on the way in, only to be told a few short years later that you're competing again, except the opposite side, with too many other sellers. I understand that that's inherently unfair, but if you're looking to sell your home in 2026, you have to reconcile that you must sell on the market today, not in the market that you wish it was. Now, I'm going to chat you through 4 main areas that I'm seeing as a listing agent in West Houston in 2026, and what you can do as a seller to help make sure that you are not one of the homes that sits on the market for 69 days. Now, the first main issue that sellers are experiencing when buyers come through their home is they are surprised to find that condition is the number one objection that they're hearing in their sale. Now, let's think about this for just a moment. If you're a buyer and there's 55,000 homes on the market, you have a lot to choose from, right? And if you're a buyer and your interest rate is over 6%, you have to be discerning on what exactly it is you're going to choose. Now, according to national surveys, buyers have ranked condition of a home as the number one important thing that they are looking for in their search. 56% of respondents cited condition over price, location, or size of the home. And that's something you as a seller must pay attention to. Now, you as a seller might say, well, a buyer can fix this carpet, or they can take care of this paint, or they'll replace their own AC, or they'll take care of their own roof. And the reality is that the market that you're operating in doesn't allow for it. I just walked a buyer through a listing, and what they said to me is, yes, I could take care of this fence replacement. I could replace the carpet and refresh the paint. I could take care of the roof in a couple of years when this one comes due, but that eats into the savings that I have for my down payment. And when buyers are dealing in monthly payments that are thousands of dollars higher than what their sellers had just a few prior years before, they simply cannot save on a month-to-month basis for very basic repairs that seem achievable in a seller's mind. Now, here's another sneaky problem about condition. Buyers have a tendency to double or triple whatever the cost of a repair might be. And this is natural, right? People are stressed, and in elevated stress levels, things become catastrophic in their minds. Your problem-solving mechanism just shuts down. And so you naturally assume that whatever is in front of you is going to be far worse than what it actually is. People are naturally emotional during the buying and selling process. So when buyers open a door and they see chipped paint or damaged carpet or ACs that look dirty or AC grates that are filthy, they naturally assume that this house has been laid to waste, and that might not be the case at all. But what I hear buyers say time on time again is that they'll assume that an AC replacement is $14,000. It could very well only be $6,000. I'll hear them say, I bet this paint job is $10,000. It could very easily only be $4,000. So what I ask every seller to do is to put themselves in the shoes of the buyer. And sometimes that sympathy is hard to garner because they say, well, I had to give up all of these things. I wasn't allowed to ask for anything when I bought in 21 and 22. But what I like to remind them is not only was your cost of borrowing much lower on a month-to-month basis, the cost basis in your home was significantly less expensive as well. So prices are still at an elevated premium across the Houston area, and buyers feel that if they are going to lay out their literal life savings, they don't want to have to take on the things that count as deferred maintenance in their minds. Now, the second major reason why your home might not be selling is the sneaky builder threat. And this one's harder to identify. You might be in an area where there is no new construction. Your area might be completely built out. But think about the psychology of the buyer in today's market. Your competition is no longer directly in your backyard, but it might be in a massive radius around your home. Buyers are looking for the best possible deal on affordability on a month-to-month basis. Now, keep in mind, too, what shifted since the pandemic. More and more employers allow people to work from home. So the yoke that binds you to a specific location on how you're going to handle a commute on a day-to-day basis maybe isn't as significant. Now, I've heard other people say, everyone's being called back into the office. We're not working from home anymore. But that's only partially true. Many employers are allowing for people to commute 3 days out of a week, right? And so 2 days at home makes a world of difference for people who are considering location. So if you're a seller in 2026, I want you to be extremely mindful of the types of incentives that builders are offering buyers in your immediate area. One major way that builders are capturing buyer attention is, of course, with interest rates. Time on time again, in different communities across different builders, we are seeing people not only offer 1 or 2 percentage point buy downs for a year or two, but we're seeing 4% 30-year fixed interest rates offered on completed inventory. And I want you to ask yourself as a seller, how do I compete on that? Now, let me give you a little bright line here. What we tell people is that a 1% difference in their interest rate typically correlates to roughly a 10% difference in overall buyer affordability. So if, for instance, the interest rate for a resale home is about 6% and the builders are offering 4%, that's about a 20% affordability difference in the buyer's mind. Now, can you offer a 20% reduction on your price? Probably not. But do you need to be extremely aware of the direct competition that you have for someone who's 5 or 6 miles away from your home? Absolutely. Now, another thing to keep in mind is what we just touched on a moment ago. If buyers are most interested in making sure that the home is in excellent condition or turnkey, and that's more important to them than size or location or amenities, you have to be mindful that new construction offers 1-year warranties on everything, bumper to bumper. They offer 2-year structural warranties for things behind the wall. They offer 10-year structural warranties for your framing and your slab. And that might not be something that you can offer at all. If your home is 10 or 15 years old, your components, your structurals, your mechanicals, your windows, roof, air conditioner, water heater, all of those things are going to eventually need to be replaced. And with new construction, what you're absolving the buyer of is having to worry about replacing something that has a 4-digit replacement cost in 1 or 2 years. Now, again, if you were a buyer in 2021 or 2022 and your experience was anything with new construction, you know that they gave you absolutely nothing. You know that builders were increasing their price literally weekly, and I understand how inherently unfair all of this sounds. But if you are looking to sell in 2026, it is critically important that you pay attention to the metrics that are directly in front of you. Now, a common refrain that I hear from sellers is, of course, that not all new construction is better. And I couldn't agree more. I have videos on videos about what new construction has done in the last 5 years. They've stripped their own quality. Maybe the builds aren't as great, but if you are a seller, you cannot underestimate the power of a financial incentive in a world where inflation and increased costs on everything are really taking a toll on the consumer. Now, the third sneaky factor for why your home might not be selling in 2026 is location. And what's more important in real estate, honestly, than location? Now, 2020 through 2022 was kind of an interesting time. We watched homes sell that wouldn't sell in any other market. I have a friend that told me about a home that sold for 10% more than her already high list price that had 2 massive sewage tanks that backed up to it. She said she couldn't figure it out, but that was the market that we were in 21 and 22. People rationalize purchases just to get their feet in the literal doors, right? So the thing about 2026 is that suddenly everybody cares about everything again, which wouldn't you expect that, because that's been true except for the very strange 2-year period that we all lived through, right? So if you live in a home that has some issues pertaining to sewage treatment plants that are in the immediate vicinity, if you have high tension power lines that run right by your home, if you have a 4-lane road in your backyard, if you have concerns that something is going to be expanded or that a commercial development is going to come in, or maybe a commercial development was opened within the last 2 or 3 years that you own the home, all of those things now affect the way in which a buyer feels about your home. Now, everybody knows that location is fixed. You can't change it. So what can you change then? You can change condition, as we just touched on, or you can change your price. And those are painful realities for every seller. And sometimes the uncomfortable truth is that we have to deliver that when we're sitting in front of a seller. Now, my goal as a listing agent is to always help my sellers mitigate any kind of negatives that might be perceived by a buyer. We're going to make sure that you're beautifully staged and beautifully photographed, and that we're going to reduce at least the visual representations of what might be negative. But fundamentally, what we are beholden to is the opinion of a buyer in any market. And I understand the need, or at least the compulsion, to say this didn't matter 4 or 5 years ago. But 4 or 5 years ago was a moment in time that I don't expect for us to see it again. So the only lever that we can pull, if location is an issue, is of course going to functionally be price. Which of course brings me to the fourth and perhaps most obvious reason why your home might not be selling, which is price. If your home sits on the market for longer than about 3 or 4 weeks, you're going to get stigmatized. And it's not just by buyer psychology. It is in fact somewhat algorithm driven. We have homes that we list into a multiple listing service on, let's say, har.com. And once we put your home into our platform or our multiple listing service, it gets sent out to 30, 40 different consumer end websites. And we have no control or agency how their algorithms work. So platforms like Trulia or Zillow or Redfin might actually suppress listings that sit longer on the market because they're not getting the eyeballs that they so critically depend on for keeping on their websites. And this isn't entirely fair to you, but it is important for you to recognize that the psychology behind this is real. If buyers see homes that no one else has hopped on, they automatically assume that something else is wrong with this home. Nobody wants to touch something that they think no one else wants. Now, as a listing agent, a frequent sort of objection that I hear from sellers is, well, don't I have to list high because someone's going to negotiate on my home? And what I can tell you is that empirically, after 12 years in this business, in every type of market, the answer to that is no. When you think about listing a home, I've used 2 analogies. I'll give you one of them. It's like frying chicken. You have one shot out the gate functionally to drop that chicken into the pot and have it crisp up beautifully. If you do it wrong, you got to take the chicken out of the pot. You got to wipe it off. You got to rebread the thing and drop it back in the fryer and hope that it works. Can you tell I'm from Texas? But the point I'm trying to functionally make is that speed to a sale is important. You really have one shot out the gate to get this done correctly. Now, sometimes people say you sold it too fast, but really what I'm getting to is that the longer you sit on the market, the more you give your leverage away as the seller. And as the listing agent, my job is to help you maintain leverage in that real estate discussion. So what does a pricing adjustment look like if you actually need to take one? Again, I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt without even looking at a home that's been sitting on the market too long that it needs to be adjusted by at least 3 percentage points. What I know as a buyer's agent and a listing agent is that someone would have been fully willing to write you an offer at your listed price if you were at least 1 or 2 percentage points within range. So when we're looking at a home that's been sitting too long, a 3% price adjustment is probably necessary. And as much as this is a mathematical conversation, it is a psychological one as well. Buyers ultimately fear rejection. It doesn't everybody. If you put forth an offer and you don't hear from somebody, what are you going to do? You're going to withdraw before someone tells you no, right? When you get told no as a buyer, what you hear is your dreams are over. And instead of living through that pain, they'll withdraw their offer before you ever hear back from them. And so what we deal in then is this cognitive dissonance between what a buyer, or put differently, fair market value, is telling you your home is worth against what a seller believes is actually fair. And sometimes what a seller believes is fair is pegged on something which is an experience that they had in a market that no longer exists. So how do we fix it? Well, now that we know what's causing a home to not actually sell, there are 2 main strategies that I employ as a listing agent to help homes that haven't sold get across the finish line. So the first main way that I propose that any seller fix this issue is, of course, the preparation strategy. Now, I'm going to clue you in on how buyers operate. If you are searching online and you're a buyer, what we have found is that buyers stop scrolling by about the 5th picture. So what does that mean? If your curb appeal isn't right, if your windows aren't sparkly, if your landscaping doesn't look good, you might have lost a buyer before they've gotten through the front door on their cell phone, right? And my job as a listing agent is to help you attract as many people as quickly as possible to your home. So what we do whenever we're listing a home is making sure that that home is perfectly prepared from inside and out. Now, I'm not asking you to fully remodel your home. This is not renovate your home to buyers' preferences today, but this is to say, for what we have, let's make it a shiny, pretty penny. And what I'm asking people to do is somewhat straightforward. It might be that we need to refresh your mulch or power wash your driveway or re-caulk around the frame of your garage or perhaps restain your front door. And all of these things that I'm talking about might be a couple $100s. We might need to raise the canopy on your trees so that we can actually see your beautiful home in that first front door photo. Now on the inside, we want to make sure that your home doesn't look kind of chewed up and spit out, right? So when you open the door, what we're looking for is paint that's not scuffed up, trim that looks like it's in good shape, baseboards that are clean, ovens that don't have grease all over them, right? Just the simple things, right? So what we're looking for is making sure that when a buyer comes through, there is functionally nothing objectionable and that you can show that your value proposition is strong against other major factors that you might be competing against that we've just discussed over the last few minutes. And another step that I ask every seller to do as part of their preparation strategy is going to make sure to take care of the structural mechanicals. So that's going to be to service your AC right before you list and maybe put a roofer on your roof and nail down loose shingles or loose flashing. Those are the 2 most expensive components that we see people negotiate on during the inspection period. And I want to help insulate you against massive renegotiation of price or terms. And the third part of the preparation strategy that I've never seen anyone regret is staging their home. Now, this might be a full professional stage where the home is vacant and the seller brings in furniture, or it might be a partial stage where the stager brings in things like lamps, art, soft items, rugs, greenery, pillows, anything that helps cue into a buyer's mind that your home, though it might be 10, 15, 20 years old, looks just like the things that they see in those model home parks. And if all of these things seem too expensive, I have great news. I'm affiliated with Compass, and Compass is a brokerage that has something called Compass Concierge, which is an exclusive program for any seller to take a short-term, low-interest loan that can be paid off at closing. So you can do all of these projects without reaching deep into your pocket. More times than not, we find that sellers do want to do these things, but their equity is simply tied up in their own home. So this is a simple way to help make sure that your home has an opportunity to be as beautiful as it can be on the market. And the second main way that we can help sellers get across the finish line is, of course, price. Now, my preference always is to do the first strategy, which is to address condition. But if we must only focus on price, you're probably going to need to make sure that it's in line with what someone else is willing to do in order to get the home up to market condition. Now, where sellers get stuck is that they say, well, I'll just knock off a few $1,000s. I'll give a carpet allowance. I'll give a paint allowance. But what they're not understanding is what I mentioned previously. that buyers will often multiply the actual cost of these exact things by at least 2 or 3 times. So we always caution people against properly budgeting or underestimating what it would cost in a buyer's mind to make a purchase where they have to make improvements worth it to them. Now, another comment that I get from people is, well, Carolyn, my condition's great. Why am I not selling? Maybe you did do everything you were supposed to do. And the reality is on this one is that the ground might be shifting underneath your feet while you're standing here. We've been in a highly volatile market for essentially the last 6 years, and this is taxing on everyone, but the ground is likely shifting beneath your feet while you stand here. Interest rates might be fluctuating by more than half a point in a single week. Buyers might feel insecure in their own jobs. The number of homes going on the market at any given point might be increasing drastically, and builders month to month might be running different incentives that are taking a chunk out of your would-be buyer pool. Of course, my preference is to gain early momentum and to never have a price adjustment ever, but sometimes when these macroeconomics change right in front of us, we have to respond with a timely price adjustment. Hopefully with this video, what you've heard today is that a winning formula for selling your home is not driven by luck. The difference between homes that are selling and homes that are sitting are driven by the way in which buyers make decisions and having a full understanding of how you as a seller must anticipate and react to those needs. And if all of this feels too overwhelming for you, I have great news. This is my literal job. I sit in front of sellers every single week to help them parse out the differences between buyer mood, interest rates, the condition of their home, specific location, or any objections that you might encounter. One of my favorite things to do is to counsel people on how to make sure that they are best positioned for a positive sale. I want to help make sure that we maximize every single dollar available to you when you choose to bring your home to the market. If you're thinking about making a move in the West Houston area, make sure to check the description below where you can find my contact information. And if you found value in this video here today, make sure to click the link below and subscribe because we put content like this out every single week. See you soon.